Hey guys, Zeteo here. I've decided to do some Alpha Cup casting. The tournament is over, but there are some games that we didn't quite get to see on the main stage, so I'd like to cast some of those so that people have a chance to take a look at them. So we're going to start with the round of 4 and kind of just cruise through that and go through the rounds, upwards, and try to find games that weren't casted or games that were interesting. And as a mentor, I'm going to be looking more at the analysis side of things, so hopefully I can give you guys some good insight as well. Anyways, let's get started. So at the bottom here, we have Darth Revan, also known as xFactor, playing as our blue Armada player. And at the top left, we have Wraxell playing as our red Armada player. We are going to see a lot of Armada through these, just because of the recent balance patch. And yeah, it looks like Wraxell's doing some funky business already. He's opening with, just doing a 1-mex opener here before lab. And what this will allow him to do is either, he can potentially crank out some, like an extra constructor, or he could potentially crank out some extra units and go across the map and do some scouting. If he decides to do units, though, I would just point out that I think he's like hoping that his opponent is directly below him instead of across the map. Cross positions are, of course, a little bit further away. And so by the time you get there, there's a much higher chance that xFactor will be ready for some kind of attack. But it also kind of depends on how he opens as well. So we'll see if he, opens with a lot of cons or if he opens with a lot of units. And what do we see? We see two cons first, then ticks. Ticks are a nice thing to start with in terms of like actual units because, they're faster, they can get places, they're cheaper, and it's a little bit easier to defend and scout with them than say like a pawn or a grunt. So with that, he's, I would definitely say if you're going to open 2 con, you should definitely open with something like a tick or, whatever the cheapest thing that you got is, just so you can like potentially fend off opposing scouts, right? So yeah, it looks like Wraxell, maybe a little bit disappointed that his opponent's not so close and is now going to the other position with these ticks. But like I was saying, now xFactor already has, plenty of ticks of his own and even putting up a radar to spot for these ticks so that he knows exactly where they're going instead of guessing. I think that's a really key thing that some players miss is just like not having a radar. And good players can cut a radar, but you got to know the timings of these attacks. You got to know that's going to take a minute for them to get to your base. And actually putting down a second radar already. So this is very safe now. You can see everything coming in from all the directions pretty easily, and I think that's pretty important. I oftentimes even see good players put down only one radar. They'll put it down like right here. And that, does pretty good coverage overall, but, this gives you a little bit more insight as to what's going on here. And then this radar, of course, extending all the way out to here. So that's, very, it's like a lot of good information to be able to like count how many units are coming in a certain direction and then send the appropriate amount to defend it. Looks like meanwhile on the other side, I believe this tick ran past here and disrupted this mex here. This mex is not queued up. I would expect it to be if it didn't happen. So, not really a big deal whatsoever. Like, to cancel something that was constructing. It's not like you're destroying the constructor or something like that. It just delays them very, very slightly. You can always just rebuild it when you can. But yeah, bits of engagements here at the bottom. As the attacker, you don't really have the vision to know where you're going. You kind of have to just like walk up, see their units, and decide if you want to continue on or run back. And it looks like Wraxell has, primarily decided to run forward to do what he can, but, it's kind of dangerous though, right? Because you're leaving behind these wrecks. Like if he was able to get a constructor, that would be maybe worth it, but, if you're just taking out mexes and the constructor's still alive, it's basically not worth it because these wrecks are basically more soldiers for your opponent. So you're just donating units to your opponent whenever you do that, assuming that they have the energy and resbot to resurrect. But yeah, Wraxell here a little bit behind, and I think he got out his second con fairly recently here. They're just now walking out to that back position here. So You know, a little bit behind on expansions here. Oh, and it looks like he walked away from this position. Does not own that mechs. Definitely a blunder on his part. You know, just like not queuing up like, oh, hey, I need to like rebuild that. So that's unfortunate for him. And then yeah, a couple of donations from xFactor, but yeah, with so many units going out, you know, running around, it's hard to you know, keep track of them all. It's hard to micro every single unit. If you are having trouble with that, by the way, a good thing to do is just zoom out, control them from this view. I mean, it's not as fun in a way because it's just icon wars, but you know, having a zoomed out view like that will certainly help you, hopefully help you, you know, just pay attention and see like, oh wait, I have engagement up here. Let me take care of that real quick. Oh wait, now the fighting's down here. Let me take care of that real quick. But like, I think, you know, a lot of players will end up getting kind of tunnel visioned on like a singular fight. Like, hey, let's do some micro here, blah, blah, blah. You know, let's move them around. And then meanwhile, their units up here are just dying. You know, so that's kind of tricky. Anyways, it looks like Wraxell coming in here doing some pretty significant damage, taking out those mexes. I don't see a con wreck. So I believe the con went from this cluster down, you know, towards this bottom one. So I think the two cons are these two. But yeah, Wraxell has basically evened out the metal income here. So that's, you know, having some pressure like that, delaying your mexes a little bit, you know, not building a second con right away, can be really effective. And I think I've seen that a lot more recently in 1v1s, where, you know, people are a little bit more mindful about how many constructors they build. And if you think about it, it's like, well, you know, you can cap more mexes, but every mex that you cap, you need to add on more energy, and that, you know, that costs money, and then all of a sudden your resources are growing, so then you need to add on more build power, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're spending all this money on economy, and that's not units. You know, so I think it's really important to like balance that out and see, you know, can I get away with greed in this situation, or do I actually need units? Do I want to try to lay down pressure, or do I need to defend? Like, you know, there's a lot of considerations to think about. But given the cross positions here, I would think players would go a little bit harder into, you know, into the economy side of things. You know, not that this is like a giant map, but it is a pretty good sized map. Because yeah, all this aggression that's going down is just mets with defense, and that means wrecks that the other player can now pick up or reclaim or whatever, right? So, you know, it gets kind of tricky. Like, you want to try to do damage, but if you can't do damage, you need to like be able to pull out and not feed them those wrecks when possible. And yeah, that takes a lot of APM. You know, a lot of awareness, a lot of zooming out to see what's going on the field. But yeah, xFactor here rebuilding these mexes. You know, still has, actually, he still only has 2 cons. So one working on some stuff down here, another one at the top of his base, probably going to move forward maybe. Yeah, it's kind of hard to keep all your mexes too if you have a lot of, you know, if you put a lot of money into resources and your opponent goes aggression, you know, it's just like a lot of territory to defend against someone that potentially is cutting that and just having more units. But yeah, little bits of skirmishes everywhere. I was gonna get this res bot. No, they start running away just in time. Looks like these are maybe gonna take out some units, but again, it's kind of at what cost, right? Because you're losing all these pawns in the meantime. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised that xFactor's metal is quite high. Yeah, I was gonna say he could definitely use a construction turret at this point, or, you know, like another one, I should say. He's working off of 3 so far. On the other side of things, Wraxell has 4 of them now, so he's able to pump out a lot more units, just doing a little bit better of a job staying on top of that. Oof. It's really challenging chasing after units, because the units running back will have like slightly more range than the units you know, going towards those units. So like they can get some extra damage in and potentially take out extra units. But look at this, a pretty large force from xFactor moving across the board here. Kind of positioned to, you know, he ran this way and knows that the army's on this side of things. So that means his units can take this stuff out, you know, while not engaging with this army, since they're all the same movement speed. But yeah, really nice play there. Just like checking this position, seeing that the army is like over there, and that cuts, you know, that part off from in the rest of Wraxell's base. Yeah, Wraxell also has, you know, he does have like the army value advantage. But yeah, I think that just had to do with the Rex. That has to do with just like what he's prioritized. xFactor has prioritized more cons at this point. He's expanded some more. So it's really up to Wraxell to, you know, kind of be on the aggressive side. But at the same time, you know, xFactor has basically like been in his face this whole time. You know, he's been in Wraxell's face, and that allowed him to build more cons, or you know, he could get away with more cons because of that. He has like space to give up. If you think about the like push and pull of battle, you know, if you're at your opponent's base, you can certainly like maybe greed a little bit, knowing that you can just fall back to like somewhere, you know, a position that's closer to your base. But then that, you know, allows Wraxell to, you know, rebuild, you know, more, you know, get more units and apply pressure back and, you know, get out of that defensive position. But yeah, small little gain there for xFactor because of that. I keep saying Wraxell because there was a player named Wraxell for a little while. So for me, the names are kind of confusing, and I apologize that might make all this really confusing for you. There's a nice bit of engagement here from Wraxell. You know, he saw a line of units. He decides go for the points. Like, you do not want to go like frontal with that, right? This is bad. Go from the side like that. Yeah, just like he's doing right here. Because that means all these units down here are not fighting. You know, you're like using several units to fight 1 or 2 units at a time. And that is just so much better of an engagement. But yeah, some more stuff going on over on this left side. Now look at this. Even xFactor has a con down here trying to expand. I think he's trying to like secure this. He might have resurrected, or I don't know. It just seems kind of weird to like skip these mexes on his way over here. But if he is able to secure this position, you know, choke this up a bit, then these back here are a bit safer, right? So interesting play to see. I'm just not sure where he got the con from. But yeah, he's certainly ahead at this point because those cons haven't been challenged. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest mistakes from Wraxell this game. It's just like not realizing that xFactor produced more cons and, you know, hasn't been like threatening them. He's been playing kind of defensively, seeing all these units, but like if he's able to you know, get some units into positions to take out those forward positions, or those forward what's it called, mexes, that'd be really, really useful. Just to like apply the pressure back, get that con count down. But yeah, I mean, I think pretty much at this point, xFactor has like gotten away with it, and so it's really hard for Wraxell to fight back here. Oh, and Wraxell actually transitioning into air here, has 5 bombers out. I don't see a scout. Yeah, I mean, I guess you don't necessarily need to scout in a 1v1 because you are probably in their base at some point anyway, so you kind of know where some buildings are. But yeah, so this is kind of like half blind, I guess is what I would call it. Just knowing that things are basic, like this whole area is basically going to be built up by this point. Personally, I do like a scout a lot just to see exactly where, you know, critical infrastructure is. And then that way you can bomb very specific targets instead of just, you know, throwing down some bombs at a base. Yeah, xFactor here realizes, okay, if you got bombers, that means you got less ground forces. And, you know, you know, knowing that he controls, you know, this corner over here, at the bottom left, and then also like starting to control the top right, basically means he's going to be ahead of his opponent, just because of, you know, that's where a lot of the mexes are going to be. Wow, he's even got some res bots over here. And this is something that Wraxell really needed to shut down, because if he gets all this metal, it's certainly a big deal. I mean, it'd be a bigger deal if he resurrected it, but I don't think he's got the time. There's certainly a lot of Rex and Wraxell doing what he can to chase after these res bots. They are a little bit slower than these pawns. Oh, but it looks like they get away. His attention not quite where it needs to be to kill those, but yeah, his attention more up here, I suppose, defending his base. Very important things to do. xFactor now adding on some fighters of his own. Doesn't want to get bombed again. But yeah, if we take a look at his base here, I guess just to quickly point out, like, these wind turbines are spaced 2 apart, which makes it a lot less efficient to bomb. Like, the things are not chaining. And so, you know, the bombing didn't really do that much. xFactor's still in a great position here, economically speaking. Also ahead on army value. So yeah, it's really up to, you know, Wraxell, I think, needed something to happen earlier, and it just didn't happen. You know, I guess to speak about, like, what I was talking about earlier a little bit more, if he had, like, taken out those cons that were expanding, you know, xFactor would not be the size that he is today, or at the moment. You know, and every moment that you're not taking out those cons, not realizing that they have more cons out, expanding, you know, is another moment that they just have a little bit more metal, and they're able to produce a little bit more than you. But yeah, xFactor's decided to build some Banshees. Banshees, not like, you know, they're not like, they don't deal like a ton of damage, but little bits of damage can be nice. If he wanted to, he could take out this position with them slowly but surely. Instead, he looks like he's like challenging the air of Wraxell, and so, you know, seeing that he's like basically like pretty safe, you know, pretty much has air dominance, he can basically send these Banshees right into Wraxell's base, or at least like take out these mexes on this side of things. And then as the anti-air pops out to defend it, he can then go back and take out this other position. So really nice, really smart play here from xFactor. Meanwhile, he also has like a gigantic force moving up here, and yeah, like I was saying, it's just like too much income for xFactor here. And then yeah, trying to go T2 during this, I think he probably read it as like a lot of people go T2 after air. But that's not what xFactor's doing, you know? Why go T2 when you can just kill him? And that'll certainly be a mistake for Wraxell as well. Just misreading that is certainly going to cost him, ending the game a little bit sooner for it.
Battle ended.
All right, so that was the first game. Let's take a look at the second game. I'm going to load that up. So yeah, that's so yeah, I guess the score is 1-0 for xFactor, taking the first game against Wraxell. So I'm just loading up the second replay here, and let's get into it.
Game started.
Game started. Okay, so we got xFactor spawned in the middle as our blue player playing Armada at the bottom, and then we have Wraxell playing as a red player, Armada, at the top. Also, both players in the central location. I guess just to point out the differences in different spawn locations on this map. You know, a center position allows you to kind of like branch out and expand in different directions, but it also allows you to get attacked from different directions. And this map is fairly open. Bots can run over some of these ridges here. And that makes it really difficult because radar will not see over the ridge, and then it's like, how do you defend it then? Because you don't, you know, you can't see it, and you see it too late, and then the bot comes in and destroys some stuff, right? So it can be a little bit tricky, but it does allow you to expand rather quickly. Whereas if you take a corner position, there's really only like so many ways into your base, it's a little bit easier. And as you expand out, you can put a radar on the ridge somewhere, and then it's a lot easier to defend from that location. But yeah, I'd be interested to see if these players understand that radar stuff. It looks like xFactor already queuing up a radar on the ridge. Meanwhile, Wraxell here, it looks like he opened with 1 mech once again. Let's see, what's yeah, that's like 200 metal difference here. And that's just like with 1 additional mech. Now, obviously, like the 3rd mech is pretty far away, so you don't really want to go for it. And if you do, like, it's basically going to set you back because you don't have the build power of the lab working for quite a while. But yeah, Tick's going to come in here, and xFactor doing the normal thing that he does, which is just produce a lot of ticks, in parts for defense and in part for aggression. But there are some pawns coming out here from Wraxell. These pawns certainly can make some quick work of ticks. And I think that's part of his game plan. But in a way, you know, xFactor having so many scouts out, he sees them coming like a mile away. So getting some pawns of his own at this point to defend. And as long as he doesn't completely screw up on energy, he should be all good with this defense. Now, both players tied up now with metal income. Wraxell a little bit lower on metal in general because of that start, and a little bit higher, or a little bit lower on energy as well. So yeah, little bits of engagement, picking off, you know, units here and there, you know, and ticks coming in from every which way. And yeah, Wraxell doing what he can to lay down pressure here. But I think just like with that bit of extra metal, xFactor is just able to produce some extra pawns at this point. Both players could definitely use a little bit of energy here. But you know, either way, they're basically spending what they can. I think xFactor at some point would like to add on a con, but needs to prioritize units to defend against this. And I think that's a really good distinction here. Is like I see a lot of players don't adapt what they're doing, and I would say it's definitely better. Like when you see someone start laying down a lot of aggression like this from Wraxell, you know, the best thing to do is just crank out units. Like even if you like have 2 or 3 cons at this point, like telling them to just like stop, what, you know, don't venture out, instead like assist the lab, like even if it's not boosting it, like at least that way you're keeping them safe so that you can produce the army to, you know, work, you know, to push away the aggression. And then once you feel a little bit more comfortable because you have more units out, then you can send them out again. A lot of times I see players just like, oh, I want to open 2 cons or 3 cons. And it's like, well, if you do that and your opponent opens 1 mech, you might be in some trouble. And, you know, being able to adapt or see that situation arise and say like, okay, I need to just keep these at base for a minute, you know, can be really important. Or maybe just expand with 1 of them instead of 2 of them or something like that. But either way, xFactor here took a little bit of damage, has to rebuild these mechs. Mechs rebuild rather quickly, so not like the hugest of deals, but at the same time, there is this tick back here. It's just going to be annoying taking out this corner mech because this con's already moved on from that position. But yeah, Wraxell actually doing a lot of damage here to xFactor. So far it's paid off this game. Now, metal income, of course, like way better for Wraxell since xFactor doesn't really have any mechs at this point. I mean, I guess he does have this one now. Yeah, let's look at Wraxell's base. You know, he's got those 3 mechs to start with. He's got another 3 here, and he has his con just kind of naked expanding behind it. Knowing that he's laying down so much pressure. This is really tricky here because there is a lot of Rex here. You know, so Wraxell is going to have to rely on that metal income. And, you know, we'll see if xFactor is able to rebuild and capitalize on those, you know, capitalize on the fact that he has those extra Rex to work with. Also notes, I do sometimes have people asking, like, is it good to, like, walk back to grab that mech again? Or do you resurrect it? If it's that far, if it was, like, right next to you, just, like, build it. But if it's, like, further away, I would just, you know, resurrect it. Because, resurrection bots are a lot faster than the cons, right? But yeah, the pressure continues as Wraxell just gets more and more of a lead here. You know, as long as he's careful with these attacks, he's not gifting away too many units. And yeah, it's kind of tricky at this point. Like, when do you stop aggression, right? Like, do you just keep laying into him, or do you stop and not feed those wrecks? And you know, I think that needs to be taken. You have to think about that on a case by case basis. There's no like always do this or always do that in that situation. You know, I think it's really important to, like, you know, figure out like, okay, there's this many wrecks, he has this many units out. Should I continue attacking, or do I just let him have those wrecks and hopefully I won't be giving any more wrecks, or and then I won't be giving any more wrecks. Or maybe your opponent's so far behind, maybe you can just do a little bit more damage, you know, and end the game. Or maybe you are giving yourself a little bit more time to expand with. Yeah, the metal difference is quite high at this point. I mean, it's been, you know, proportionally it's been really high the whole time, but you know, 25 metal to what was it, like 11 is like not that. That's not great to be sitting at that for a while. But yeah, nothing but pawns so far. He's actually working up a lot of metal. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, okay, at which point do you build a construction turret? And honestly, I think this is a little bit too late. I think like you needed to set this up a little faster given your income. You know, of course, it's really difficult when you're trying to like micro really well so you don't gift units, you know, to also build on the construction turret. But yeah, now that xFactor has picked up quite a few of these units, it's really important for Wraxell to add on defenses where he can. You know, at this point, I don't feel like he can really pressure here. I mean, he can like poke, but I wouldn't trade anymore at this point for sure, because it's gonna be really rough. Oh, especially with the D-guns. The D-guns are so good. Yeah, okay, so that was a pretty big misstep there, I would say. Just getting a little too close to that commander. You know, trying to find more damage, but like, you know, now that these units are gone, now that Wraxell doesn't have these units, he doesn't have that pressure anymore. And that, you know, xFactor already trying to lay down some pressure, but like soon enough, that's gonna get even worse because that frees up all these units to now go attack instead of sit back at home and defend. So definitely quite a big misplay in terms of that. So Wraxell has to be very careful now. Yeah, and there's just so many wrecks still, even though a lot of them were already picked up. Yeah, I think this is going to be oh, that's a lot of metal. That's a lot of metal that he needs to spend. Get another concert. Oh no. I mean, another concert, but you could probably put down another lab for sure and just start really cranking out units. There's a certain points where it does take a certain amount of time for the units to leave the lab, where the lab's not building like a new one instantly right after. And so it's you know, there's a certain point where it's just better to have the second lab instead of continuously add on con turrets. The number for a lot of people is 4. I would say 4 or 5-ish con turrets on your lab before making another one. I mean, that is for a bot lab. For vehicle plants, you know, it's more like 7 or 8 or something like that. You know, vehicles, you know, take quite a bit of build power to make, so it's something to consider. Yeah, Wraxell, I mean, I guess he's pushed everything back for the most part. You know, xFactor just kind of biding his time, letting his opponent come to him a bit, knowing that he's a little bit on the back foot. But the metal gap has certainly closed quite a bit as xFactor's re-expanding here. A couple of units still at the top here, getting picked off. Yeah. Let's see, is there a radar? Yeah, so this radar sees this. There's another one over here that sees that, so Just trying to gauge like where, how many units you need at each position. He's going to need a little bit more here, but I think with, being able to resurrect some of these units is certainly going to help out. But yeah, I'd be really surprised if xFactor was able to pull this off. The game's certainly been in Wraxell's favor a little bit, but I think Wraxell just like got a little, laid into xFactor a little too hard. I think at some point he needed to cut his losses and say like, okay, I'm ahead. Let me just chill and not leave a bunch of wrecks behind. Instead, like maybe contain your opponent instead of try to, do more damage. Three res bots running around the back. Oh, he could lose these res bots. That's a big deal. That's a very big deal. It takes time to build up that many res bots when it comes to the early game here. Alright, well, he loses every single one of them. Not ideal. Now Wraxell coming in here from the side, looking for some more base damage potentially. Yeah, see, I guess to see a difference in like playstyle, like Wraxell comes in here to attack, and he sees opportunity to maybe do some damage, and yeah, you can in this situation. You got plenty of units being reinforced. Actually, let me just talk about this for a minute because that's a lot of damage again. Okay, so he's able to do quite a bit here. But what I was gonna say was, if you come in this direction and you see like, okay, there's the base there, there's units to defend. You could just go this way and take out all these mexes once again, and then still possibly get out, right? Like you come over here, you split off one pawn to kill this, one pawn to kill that. The rest of them kill this, and then just run off. And that way, you're potentially only losing 2 pawns, and maybe a little bit more because of the LLTs, but for the most part, you're not really gifting a lot of stuff. But yeah, Wraxell actually has plenty to just come in here once again, do a lot of damage. And, I mean, this is like game-ending damage, right? This is basically got to be it for xFactor. I think that's a GG, and Wraxell wins match number 2 here. Let me put up the screen so I can get into... Oh. What the heck? Oh, I see. Okay, my games are just like mislabeled. Or not mislabeled, they're not in order. I was trying to put them all in order, but there is no ordering because of the, the file names have all the numbers of times and stuff on it, so not quite what I wanted. Anyways, I did find the third game. I'm loading up right now.
Game started.
All right, so this one's on Heartbreak Hill. We have xFactor spawned at the bottom right as our blue player playing Armada. This used to be a bit more of a, whatchamacallit, a Cortex map, right? Because grunts were so favored, but now pawns are so favored, so now it's an Armada map. This map, you basically always start with bots because, bots can run over this ridge, whereas vehicles cannot. And then eventually, typically, you put, con turrets over here, put a vehicle plants up here, or something like that. Or maybe you put the con turrets like around here, vehicle plant down there, so it's a little bit closer. And then, yeah, different people play on this map pretty differently. But I think a pretty common thing to do, is to, of course, you take your starting mexes and you work your way this way. And you secure this position. And once you have that secured and this choke here secured, then all these can be kind of blindly expanded to. So it's like 2 natural chokes here to defend the whole thing back here. And then, on the other side, it's like, okay, if your opponent's there, then, hopefully you can take some of these mexes for yourself. As Wraxell, if we're looking at Wraxell's point of view. So yeah, you take those, you have all these, and that's just like the map becomes a diagonal split in a way because of that. So if you're ever able to like secure this for yourself, that's a really strong move as well. Anyways, let's take a look at what's going on here. So we got xFactor, of course, doing the whole tick thing. Wraxell doing some ticks and some pawns. Likes to add in some of those pawns. In fact, I believe he's open with the pawn here. Open with the pawn so that the pawn gets there by around the same time when the ticks do. And that certainly is going to help out, destroy these enemy ticks here. So just, it's a move to just like, it's like, well, I know you're going to react like this, so let me do this in response. And then hopefully I can push it a little bit further. But yeah, I mean, by this time, xFactor already has a couple pawns out for himself, already expanding with a con this way. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, it looks like Wraxell and on 2 cons isn't quite using them quite yet. And I think that's partly just due to, like, where the focus is. So Wraxell focused on attacking, is looking and microing his units, and then his cons are just kind of sitting there helping out with stuff that they don't really need to help out with. In fact, just like adding too much build power to the lab. Basically meaning they're idle. Oh, he actually loses the con there. 1 tick. 1 con. Yeah, xFactor doing a great job. I think Wraxell might be a little bit too taxed with APM. But also, like, it's actually easier to lose that con than you might think. The tick can just, like, run around in circles, and your defending ticks need to, like, somehow catch it. Can be a tricky thing to do. Oh, even taking out a pawn there. So yeah, advantage to xFactor just for having that con out sooner. And I think if Wraxell, had his first con go out and start expanding immediately when it finished, he'd be in a much better position than he is. Because the first mechs that you build is such a big percentage of your income. Yeah, like right now, it's just 10 metal to 12, and that's 20%. That's crazy. But yeah, it looks like Wraxell a little bit more on the defensive side of things now at this point. xFactor just doing a little bit better of a job with those cons, able to get that extra income, and now able to apply some pressure here. But Wraxell has switched over to, like, really boosting here for a minute. Got out some extra cons, or I'm sorry, some extra units. And I think he's going to be able to parry this no problem. Yeah, xFactor actually doing a bit of damage, taking out these extractors. But just like before, it's like, the extractors can be rebuilt pretty easily. It's a bit annoying, but it's, it's not too bad. And then you're just kind of like leaving some wrecks around. But at the same time, he didn't really use a lot of ticks, or he didn't really use a lot of pawns to do that attack. He did a lot of ticks. And ticks don't really leave wrecks, and if they do, it's such a low value wreck that it's like doesn't really matter. So definitely a very big difference if you think about attacking with a pawn or a tick, and like the wrecks that they leave. Okay, interesting. I would think that xFactor would put down towers here and then put down towers here, and then expand here first. At least that's what, I feel like that's a little bit better play, but maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, it looks like Wraxell basically doing the same thing. Just expanding up that way, and xFactor just getting into position to defend, or to, potentially shut that down. Wraxell trying to do the same thing, sending units across the map here. Yeah, this is quite a few units for xFactor in this position. It looks like he is going to get the con, so sending a whole nother con this way is really annoying. It is quite the distance. Some of the mechs are pretty spread out. Looks like xFactor looking to save his own con. And yeah, there's just like a few less units than xFactor had. This con's able to run back to this LLT. and defends. Meanwhile, over here, it looks like there's another engagement that xFactor is kind of just losing those pawns. Nice trade for Wraxell here, especially since those wrecks are on his side. Certainly helped him out later on. Unfortunately, some idle units, but that, you know, it happens. It happens. New radar going down. Very important. Replace your radars. Because, you know, they're so cheap. Losing a radar and not rebuilding it, like, the radar is just such a important thing to have at this point in the game. Like, knowing where the attacks are coming from is just so very vital. See, I kind of noticed this, well, I shouldn't say anything. I was gonna say there's a difference between like how Wraxell is doing radar and how xFactor is doing radar. It seems like xFactor is like kind of, you know, knowing that he's going to be building a radar over here, has decided to place this radar a little bit more further north, kind of just working with more of a like 2 radar system, you know, whereas Wraxell here just working with a 1 radar system. I will note too that's, you know, generally people put a radar up here as well. Oops. xFactor accidentally making a 2nd radar in this position instead of a mech. Yeah, pawns coming across the map, trying to find some damage. These are pretty much just gonna, I mean, he might get this LT. He could get the con, actually. I forgot that the con was there. Yeah. I mean, leave some wrecks, but killing the con is, you know, certainly a big deal as well. Nice, like, concave here from xFactor. Yeah, I kind of feel like, you know, after you cast so many games, you're like, wait a minute, who am I watching again? That's right, I'm watching xFactor. So I was tripping myself up a little bit. Yeah, xFactor certainly has an advantage. You know, mostly because this con stayed alive. Wraxell trying to do the same thing. Now has that con up there to, I'm not sure if he picked up the con that died or if he, you know, just sends a new one or what, but he does have a con up here now, so hopefully he'll be grabbing that soon. Because, yeah, that's basically the only difference in their metal economies. It's just like this little bit of metal. Yeah, I guess that little bit and this one here. So, yeah, no, like, gigantic difference yet. I mean, I would just say the xFactor has a bit of an advantage because the con survived. He's doing a nice job pulling back his units when he, you know, meets a bigger force. Very important to do. So I guess I'll say it like this too. It's like you can send a raid up here, but if you meet resistance, fall back, and then those units are still alive, still generating threats in that region. So that means Wraxell, you know, now also has to produce or to keep units here to defend. xFactor finding an opportunity to jump on these. Decides to go for the LLT. Bit of a risky play here, but if he gets the con... Okay, he does not get the con. So yeah, you know, here it's like they traded fairly evenly, but the wrecks are in a position where Wraxell should get them. Same thing kind of going down on the bottom side, but it looks like xFactor comes out on top there. Yeah, sometimes it's just about, like, you know, the aggressor, you know, since you're the aggressor, you're spending APM on it, or awareness on that situation, that particular, like, micro bit, whereas the defender might be looking elsewhere. And so you can, like, jump on units, do some damage, engage how you want to engage. So in some sense, you know, Bar can be an aggressor's kind of game. Like there's definitely opportunities for the aggressor to do pretty well. But yeah, once you get up to, you know, a position where more, or where you're fighting higher OS players and they have more awareness, you know, they can generally keep up with it, keep up with all the different attacks. But you know, it's really tricky. It's really challenging, and so to see players that do that is just really, really cool. Seeing that like high level of skill. I'm surprised neither player have switched in the vehicle at this point, but I suppose they're like xFactor is finally getting to the point where he has the metal fort. I mean, you could argue Wraxell has the metal fort, but he doesn't really have a lot of concerts. So he really needs more concerts to be able to pump out a little faster here. xFactor just doing a bit of a better job this game, staying on top of his, you know, build power economy. These units getting a little bit caught here. Nice engagement from Wraxell, just taking some extra kills there. Once again, attacking the points of the line instead of directly at the face of the line. Ooh. That was a nice pullback. Very important. Oh, but there he gets caught. Okay. xFactor is going to take advantage of that. Moves in on both sides, and he's going to be crushing through this. Takes a nice, you know, trade here, but I think, or at least the initial trade was good, but then, you know, as it progressed and backing out, favored xFactor a little bit less and less. But yeah, just look at this production, just tons of units coming out. Still no vehicle switch, just lots of pawns. Yeah, there's just so many wrecks here now. So if Wraxell is able to clean this up and stop the aggression here, all of a sudden he has a huge reclaim field. You can basically double his army, or more than double his army if he picks those up. So any res bots he can, like, you know, sneak into his build queue are good, but of course you need enough units to be able to keep this away from you. But yeah, res bots are stealthy, so these are not showing up on the radar. But yeah, I think just sending a couple of units here to just like defend against that kind of possibility would be a pretty smart move to do, because the wreck field is so large. And yeah, xFactor just being able to kind of reclaim a lot of that metal. In fact, he's put that metal into an air lab. So now Banshee's coming out. Let's see, Wraxell on the other side of things, just still producing bots. Yeah, also, you know, with all the reclaiming, spending a lot more energy picking those units up. And yeah, I think the economy for xFactor is too superior at this point. He's able to produce quite a few units on the ground, but, you know, in addition to that, also producing air. And yeah, I'm curious to see when Wraxell sees this. Okay, so basically right now he should know that something's coming. Now he sees that they are Banshees. And so what is he doing? Anti-air bots, alright. Nettle, nettle, another nettle. But yeah, a little bit of a surprise, like, Banshee attack like this can be a nice way to just, like, say, like, hey, I'm gonna force you to make some anti-air, and those aren't ground units. Meanwhile, you know, I have my Banshees and stuff going around the map destroying mexes that your anti-air can't reach. You know, and for that reason, a lot of players opt to go for an air lab. But look at this. It looks like, you know, xFactor coming out on top on the grounds army too. You know, Wraxell jumping on it thinking that he's going to have a superior army, you know, with xFactor going air, but he's just so far behind in economy that he just isn't ahead on ground either. Oof. Anti-air does so good against Banshees. They do have a lot of health, mind you. They have a lot of health. 560 with the recent patch. They still die pretty fast to anti-air, so I think that's a good thing to have. But yeah, Banshee's not terribly useful if they run into anti-air, but if they, you know, they can certainly run around to the sides here, picking off this and that, and just kind of putting Wraxell behind economically and whatnot. The xFactor's had to back up here a little bit. Ooh, this is going to be a nice engagement for Wraxell. xFactor not quite paying attention. Okay. Okay, it's double bot lab. I was going to say, like, okay, he certainly has, like, a lot of units coming out. Yeah, double bot lab, Centurions on the way, and these Centurions are certainly going to shoo this away. I think, yeah, Wraxell's going to need to eat as much of this as he can before the Centurions get there. Especially the double bot lab, because then he can switch over to res bots and just produce a whole bunch of res bots as well as pawns at the same time, and just, like, you know, get up there and cause problems. But yeah, Wraxell definitely not going to be able to stay here. Forced out at this point, especially with the Centurions coming up. And yeah, so now that rec field, that gigantic rec field, is going to go to xFactor. And yeah, with the rest of the map basically cleaned up, there's not much that Wraxell can do at this point. Oh, and getting his own air lab, yeah. I mean, I suppose maybe you could do like some kind of crazy play with bombers or something, and then just hope that xFactor doesn't push you or something like that. I don't know. I don't know how this doesn't really work out, I don't think. Here comes the res bots starting to, was he resurrecting? Yeah. And yeah, there are some forces, like, you know, trying to see where the expansions are. But yeah, not enough to really do anything, but maybe hoping to find a stray con or something. And yeah, just kind of overwhelming at this point. So, like, normally I'd be, like, speeding through this. Oh, you know what? We're going to speed through it a little bit. Because, you know, just sitting here, like, watching it slowly happen is kind of rough.
Battle
okay, GG.
ended.
All right, that's over. But yeah, anyways, that was the 3 games from round of 4. Wraxell versus xFactor. You know, first we saw Serlata, then Eye of Horus, and then Heartbreak Hill. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll keep doing more of these, you know, and just kind of go through the later parts of the tournaments. Thanks for watching.